Good morning, everyone. It's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. How are you having? How are you? Having a great day? I hope so. Welcome to the first episode of today's shows. We are going to talk about a show that I fell into this rabbit hole. I would say, the kind of person that loves a good love story. I believe in love. Let's just say, I believe in love at first sight. And I really got for sure into Love is Blind, the latest series that is on Netflix. Interestingly, I know someone who is connected to the show, and it was them that reached out to me that said, you have to watch this because I need to know your opinion. And so I wasn't going to watch it, but because they recommended it and I love them, so thank you for the recommendation. You know who you are. I watched it, and last night was the episode where the couples decided whether or not they were going to get married. So if you watched the series, the premise of the show was that a bunch of couples, or a bunch of women and men, were going to meet in Atlanta, and they were going to be sequestered apart from one another. And during their time, they would not be able to see each other. They would have to stay in these pods, which were walled off, and they could not see each other, but they could hear each other. Kind of like just talking on the phone. And in the pods, they were having dates where they would talk to each other and get to know one another and develop interactions and decide whether or not they really liked each other. And over the course of 4 weeks, there were a number of couples that came out of it that ended up being engaged. There was a lot of drama that happened because some of the girls liked some of the same guys. There was some heartache where some of the guys liked people that the girls didn't like, and typical dating scenarios. The biggest caveat obviously was that they had no idea what the other one looked like. And so when they finally met in person, 5 of those couples ended up getting, actually 6 couples got engaged. One of the couples actually broke up on their first few days in Mexico, but the rest of them made it all the way to the wedding. And last night was the weddings, and this was the decision that they had to make. Interestingly, the show was actually put together and produced by the same people that put together Married at First Sight. So the weddings actually reminded me a lot of the way the setup is on Married at First Sight, the same type of room, same type of chairs, same type of vibe. So on the episode 9, we started off with Gina, Nina, or Gigi, and Damien's wedding. And you see these two have had a very back and forth relationship. Gigi is she's from Venezuela. She has a lot of passion. She is admittedly the type of person that will push someone away, and she said self-sabotage a relationship. And Damien is sort of this more laid back, serious kind of guy, strong, but willing to sort of manage that heat of Gigi. They were an odd match right from the beginning, but they hit it off. Initially, they did well in Mexico, but the fire between the two started almost immediately with a lot of back and forth, a lot of arguments, with Gigi trying to push him away constantly, with the two of them bickering about just about everything, with her starting fights, with him starting fights, with making people wonder, like, why do these two even get along? How do they even have anything in common? They seem such an odd match. And somehow they get all the way to the end, and she is fully in, even though there were times throughout this season that I truly believe they were going to split before they even got there. So I was shocked that they actually got to the wedding day. I was more shocked that on the day of the wedding, she said, "I do." That's right. Gigi said she would do. Now, the shocking part is that Damien seemed very steadfast, but he had told her repeatedly throughout the season that if she continued to do things in a certain way and act out, he might not be able to do this because of the instability of the relationship and him not thinking that they were ready. And ultimately, that's exactly what happened. He said that he couldn't marry her. So they are at their wedding, and she says, "I do," and then he's crying and uncontrollable, and he says, "I don't." And that has her running out. So The clips that you see in Netflix that they tease where the bride's running out and falls down, that's her. She is she's completely like heartbroken, and he is basically just trying to reason with her and say, like, one day you like me, the next day you don't. One day you're all in, the next day you're not. And I just don't know how I can do that long term. And I'm not ready at this point, and I don't think you are either, because today you're all in, but tomorrow you might not be. And so he ends up walking away from her. Now, there will be a reunion next week. So we'll see whether or not they broke up for good. That's the one thing that the show did not tell us, is where these couples stand today. We do have a few clues for a couple of them, but not this couple. So I don't know what their status is at this point. But Damien says I don't, Gigi says I do, and they are done. The next couple up was Amber and Barnett. Now, Amber and Barnett were the couple that I didn't really get from the first time, because I feel like so much of the show really focused on this love triangle that Barnett had, where he had 3 different girls, Elsie, Amber, and Jessica, that he was all talking to and had a connection with. And it seemed as though the show really focused on his relationship with Jessica, because she seemed very intense about it. And Jessica had another interest with Mark, which we'll get there in a minute. So it was odd to me when he picked Amber, because I always thought that he liked Jessica, which the way the production made it seem, obviously, editing is a huge factor here. So these two meet in the pods. She's kind of she's from, she's spent some time in the military. She is a guy's girl, I would say, but extremely like goofy. He's kind of a frat boy. I don't really see the appeal, but he's Barnett. He's tall. He's a baseball player. He's, girls like that kind of stuff. And she wasn't working at the time. So there was a lot of questions, because the way that it was edited, it made it appear that Amber was looking just for someone to save her because she had debt and she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and all of these different things, and looking as though Barnett was going to take her out of her situation because she grew up with not having a lot of money. So she always seemed very all in this situation, and Barnett still remained sort of wishy-washy, or maybe that's just how it appeared. And Jessica, who we'll meet in a couple minutes, was trying her best throughout the weeks that they were living together and working towards their wedding, trying to get back in the good graces of Barnett, even though she was telling them that she didn't like them. Behind the scenes, she's telling other people that she does like them. She doesn't get why they're together. She wishes that he would have picked her, blah, 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 blah. Well, anyways, they get to the wedding. On the day of the wedding, they say she looks really sort of upset because she says that Barnett has told her that he has cold feet. But ultimately, Barnett does show up. She walks down the aisle. She actually looks stunning. And Barnett and her both say, I do. So there you go. Interestingly, Barnett and Amber were interviewed by Entertainment Tonight, which is actually on their YouTube channel, on Entertainment Tonight's YouTube channel. And they're still together. So, because they were filmed together, their Instagrams, she follows his dog, they follow each other. There are photos of trips where they're on at the same time. So it's clear that Amber and Barnett are still together if you are interested. And they also talked about how they didn't have any idea that Jessica was doing some shady stuff behind the scenes, and that actually really upset Amber. And apparently next week in the reunion, that will be addressed. Next couple up was Kelly and Kenny. Now, this is an interesting couple because I was actually never really into them. I didn't like them either. They didn't really do a whole lot for me. Kelly she's like a coach or a fitness coach. Kenny is something. He is an old soul, let's just say. They're both like the guys in this, almost all the guys are younger than the women. That's another thing I should say. But that shouldn't really matter. But in this situation, it shocks me because Kenny's only like apparently 27 years old. And I always got the sense that he was like in his late 30s, just with his like demeanor and sort of just the way he carried himself, let's just say. And from the very beginning, it seemed like they had a lot of chemistry. They went to the beach. They were like very, flirty, and they kissed a lot and they enjoyed each other's company. But the biggest thing throughout their relationship was that Kelly could never get him out of the friend zone. And even though she was like kissy with him, she said she just couldn't see him as anything more than just a best friend. And despite all of that, like, I don't know that she ever really told him that. She just kept trying to push him off and not going all the way. Let's just say they were the only couple that did not go all the way, apparently. So on the wedding day, Kenny was all in, obviously. He never really wavered, and Kelly was not. And I don't think anyone could be surprised. Kelly's sister tried to sit her down and make her see the big picture and say, like, Kenny is the best guy that you've ever brought home to us. He's the nicest. He's the most loving, blah, 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 blah. But Kelly said that she just couldn't do it. It wasn't there, and that he was more just like a friend. And even during her vows, she was like, it was always in past tense. Like, you meant so much to me. The memories we shared have been great. You know, like, you could tell she was going to say, I don't. So they don't make it to marriage, and I don't think they're still together. Kenny's been on Instagram posting all kinds of stuff, and she's in Atlanta and he's in North Carolina, so I don't know that they're still together, although we will find out next week. All right, next up is Jessica and Mark. So Jessica and Mark were the most, I don't know, Jessica was my least favorite, let's just say. And I don't think a lot of fans actually like Jessica. So Jessica is 34 years old. She and Mark is 24 years old. So their age difference was the biggest thing that she was always like kind of obsessing about. And because she didn't think that he would be ready for the commitment in which she was ready for, because she was at a place where she wanted to get married. She would want to have kids. He's only 24. Would he be ready for kids? Mark, for his part, was very steadfast that he wanted and was ready for whatever came his way. He loved Jessica way more than Jessica loved him. In fact, Jessica was about all in with Barnett, and then Barnett basically said that he was ready to propose to Jessica, and then the very next day said that he wasn't, and then they ended their relationship, and then Jessica had broken up with Mark before this happened with Barnett because she thought that she and Barnett were going to go all the way. And instead of just leaving, which a normal person would do because she didn't really feel Mark, she ran back to Mark, which felt very desperate to me and felt like, well, I just want to win the game. So she and Mark get back together almost like, I feel like she did this because she was upset that Barnett was going to continue on with someone else. So she's like, well, if Barnett's going to be happy with someone else, I'm going to be happy with someone else. So she ends up picking Mark, and right off the bat, she's not attracted to him. He's shorter than she would appear like, and I don't even know how tall he is. She's not a very tall person, but she wanted a taller guy. The age things continued to be an issue, but they got along. Although they kept saying they had the same personality, I did not see that at all. Jessica was messy. She could not hold her liquor. She was always obsessed with what Barnett was doing. Never really seemed like she was into what Mark was doing, was telling other people that she wasn't really into Mark. And then towards the end, they get closer and they finally do the deed, and then everything's perfect. And then they get to the wedding, and I still know that despite everything that she's saying to Mark, they're not going to get married. And they didn't. So Mark 100% said yes. Jessica said no, and she just said she couldn't do that to him. She couldn't be with someone and pretend like she wanted to be with him, and she wasn't going to lie. And I just thought when she said that, I was like, well, then why did you lie for all of these weeks? Because you never really wanted him to begin with. You were never really attracted to him. All you wanted to do was try to like weasel your way back into Barnett's good graces and interfere with his relationship. And for Barnett's part, he held his own and was very clear to Jessica that he was happy with Amber, and it appears Barnett and Amber are still happy. These two, Jessica and Mark, I don't know if they are together. His Facebook says he's single. She hasn't posted anything about him, but they still follow each other on Instagram, which, according to the source that I talked to, said don't hold a lot of stock into that. And then finally, there they are at the wedding. And then finally, Cameron and Lauren, who are probably everyone's favorites, or I would have to say, because these two were so sweet together. They were the first one to get engaged. Cameron was very... like he's like this outdoorsy, thoughtful guy that's just very easygoing, and he was always very kind and loving and supportive to Lauren. Lauren is this sort of very sweet yet fiery and opinionated and strong woman. All great adjectives, not insults, by the way. And interestingly, Cameron was the first white individual that she had ever married, and so the interracial component of it was a factor here because she is very pro, the Black family and making sure that, in that sort of civil rights, helping socioeconomic, keeping the family's unit strong. That's how she grew up with her father. And so she was nervous about introducing Cameron to her father. She had actually never introduced a guy to her father. Think about that. And so this was like her first very serious relationship where she brought him home. And because Cameron's amazing, everyone loved him. I don't know how anyone could actually not like Cameron. He had dated another woman that was African American, so this wasn't his first, relationship of this nature. He was very prepared. He told her father that, he was very comfortable. He had nothing to made her father feel very comfortable. And so on the day of the wedding, which was interesting, is that as they go forward, they have this very strong connection. They're very supportive of one another. They have a lot in common. They seem to have the same goals, the same interests, even though they have different races, which ultimately in this day and age should not really matter, in my opinion. They managed that the thing that they think is going to be the issue, which is the interracial component, isn't. And so these two get to the altar, and it was interesting because Lauren towards the end was sort of wishy-washy, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. This is like my total life. Like even at the bachelorette party, she was like, yeah, if I get married. But ultimately they said I do. And part of me wonders if that was really edited that way or if she really was feeling that way. But I don't know. But these two are still very much together. If you go onto their Instagram, her photos are still in the house that you see them when he takes her to her home when they are moving in together, and he's like, this is where I live, this is where I would love to share my life with you. Her photos are still there. There are photos on Instagram of their Christmas tree with their stockings that say Cameron and Lauren. Even though they weren't following each other on Instagram, my source said that a lot of that is just like to build anticipation for the show. And up until the show, they probably were following each other, and they production likely had both of them erasing all of their photos together. And here's the other thing that this person told me is there was 3 other couples that actually got engaged, and they were not picked to go to Mexico. So there was 3 other couples that were in the pods that their stories were not continued. So there was 9 total couples that actually got engaged, and they only continued on with 6, and then only 5 made it to the wedding, and only 2 got married. So that was part of it. I was like, well, what? They already gave up on 3 couples? That's weird. But then another thing that I thought was interesting is that with all of the stuff that happened with Barnett and with the girls, my source says that Amber, of all of the girls, was very uninterested in hearing about the drama or other people's relationships with Barnett. She was very, very, very focused on just being there. All of the girls, according to the source, said they were there for love and for the right reasons. So, and when I was trying to poke and prod to see who was together, I had figured it out early on that Cameron and Lauren got married and Barnett and Amber got married, and they wouldn't tell me, but they said, I think you're on the right track. So, Love is Blind was the first season. It's done really, really, really well. The weird part is it was filmed almost 15 months ago before it ever aired. My source didn't even think it was going to get picked up because it was filmed such a long time ago, but it sounds like Netflix is happy with this and they might do another season. And next week they put together a reunion so fans can see where the couples are today and catch up with them. I thought it was a good premise. There was parts of the show that I didn't really like. I felt like they put too many obstacles in the way by putting them back together with the relationships that they had previously said goodbye to in the pods because they all lived in the same community. I thought there was an overall lack of diversity on the show, even though there were some cast members that were ethnically or racially diverse. There was actually a lot of just lack of overall diversity as a whole, which is weird because Atlanta is a very it was filmed in Atlanta, and if you know anything about Atlanta is a very diverse city. Some critics were not happy with the overall feel of it being very heavily focused around hetero relationships. And yeah, I don't know. Part of me is just like, Jessica's biggest thing is she couldn't connect Mark in the pod to the person she met in person. Kelly had the same issue, and that got me thinking that love can be blind. You can absolutely make a connection to someone emotionally, but there is a physical aspect. And so if that person doesn't actually meet what you find attractive, you're not going to be with them, no matter how great of a person they are. You will end up like Kelly and friend zoning them, or Jessica and friend zoning them. And the other aspect of this show is that it's not as hard to find love when every single person you pick is super attractive and looks like a model. All the women are beautiful, all of the men are built and look great. So the fact that nothing is really real world, you're not seeing any girls that are a little bit chubby or, have acne, or guys that are, beer guts or balding, or crooked teeth, or, just really anything that could make someone sort of shy away. And so, the vain things. So had they actually been put in a situation where they had more vanity and more reality, with people maybe not being so aesthetically pleasing, I think there could have been a lot more reality. But again, it's reality TV, and you have to make sure that your cast is good to look at, or else people won't tune in. Wah, wah. Anyways, I want to know what your thoughts are. Were you surprised? Were you not surprised? Who was your favorite couple? Are you going to watch the reunion? Would you watch another season of this? Tell me in the comments below. All right, you guys, I'll be back later. Bye.